Hello, travelers. My name is Grace Simmons, and this is the Random and Wonderful podcast. Settle in and listen to stories of wanderlust and transformation as you gain tips to inspire your next travel experience. The Random and Wonderful is brought to you by the Amethyst Palava Hut, LLC. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Random and Wonderful. My guest today is Miguel Yga, and we are going to talk about travel. We're going to learn a lot because Miguel has a lot of experience when it comes to travel. And so I'm really excited to kind of get into his stories. Miguel, welcome so much. Could you tell us a little bit about you before we get into your experience with travel?
Hey, Grace. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to talk to your listeners. My name is Miguel Yga. I am an adventure traveler and a nomadic writer who's been traveling and been on the road for the past 8 years, especially among indigenous peoples. As a part of this journey, I have quite a bit of everything from traveling among Mayan shamans to nearly getting eaten by sharks to having beautiful adventures all over the world and writing about them, and recently starting my own YouTube channel and showing my stories in more visual ways. In the end, I am a storyteller, and there's nothing I love more than to have like a beautiful experience and that I can torture somebody at the bar with.
That's not how I was expecting you to end that. That's funny. We're going to talk about you almost getting eaten by sharks in a bit because I'm glad you're still here. How did you begin your travel journey? Did you always know you wanted to, because you talk about how your travel connects to like people who are indigenous and understanding that culture. Was that always the focus of what you wanted out of travel, or how did that even come about?
It kind of all came out of a fever dream that I had, like when I had like my existential crisis in my mid-20s. Like I'm sure like many of your listeners like do too. But I'm originally a corporate lawyer. So I studied corporate law here in Mexico, and I started working as a lawyer since I was 19. You know, like proofreading contracts, like paperwork, like that kind of a thing. And over time, I mean, I really loved it. Like, I really do like it. But over time, the more I did it, the more I had this growing feeling of like, I am not experiencing the world. I am not like fully living my life. Like, there was this growing feeling of that there was something I wasn't doing. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And I just kind of stuffed it down. You know, I just did like the good, what we all do, and I just like kept like stuffing it down, kept like denying it. I even like jumped into like a master's degree, like finished my master's degree, and I kept working until one day the levee broke, and it all just kind of came flooding out of this like huge existential crisis. Just kind of did not know what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew it wasn't law. I knew I wasn't living authentically, but I didn't know what living authentically looked like. So I just kind of started like thinking, trying to resolve this like crippling existential crisis. At the time, I had just started my law firm mainly because I really wanted to travel, and I wanted to have like the flexibility to be able to travel. In Mexico, you get very, very little vacation time if you're not self-employed. And if you're self-employed, you get too much vacation time. So I have been like starting to like warm up to travel and adventure. And I knew I needed that shift in careers or in life purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of I was looking for a sign, something that would tell me, okay, like this is the thing. Because I was going off really up the deep end. I was like, should I go back and study like biology and like become like a marine biologist, as I'm sure like everybody does when they have an existential crisis?
Right. What?
Like, or like, do I want to write? Because I always wanted to be a writer. I was always like the book person in school. I actually used to go like to school carrying all my book collection, like the whole stack of books when I was like in elementary school and stuff. So of course I got bullied. But I also wanted to travel. I had recently started just traveling alone because
Mm.
my friends all had jobs and they couldn't or wouldn't or didn't have the money or whatever it was. There was always an excuse and we never traveled. So I started traveling on my own. And I had recently had that shark experience in the Bahamas and it just I was kind of like, oh, like that felt good. And
I'm
we'll,
sorry. Hold on.
we'll get there in a bit
Oh, okay.
if you
Please
want
keep
to.
going.
Yeah. So it all culminated in this moment when I had this flashback to when I was in kindergarten and the teachers were asking us, it was one of those like dumb little things that you would do in kindergarten, typical things where it's like, oh, draw what you want to be when you grow up. And they
Mm-hmm.
give you
Mm-hmm.
crayons and you're drawing on like a piece of paper, And I don't know why I had this flashback where like I clearly remembered what I drew. And what I drew was like this map of Africa, which for Mexicans was like the furthest place you could go, right? It was the most
That's
like,
interesting. Yeah.
like the most exotic, far off place, like safaris and like this whole like notion of being an explorer. And I remember I drew like the continent and I put like the compass in there and I put mountains and rivers and I drew like little lions and the whole thing. And I remember showing it to my teacher and just saying, I want to be an explorer when I grow up. And I remembered that and it all just kind of clicked.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, explorer. Well, of course. I mean, that's what you love doing. Like you love whether it's exploring ideas through books or whether it's exploring the outside world through travel or exploring stories and like what they have to teach us. Like that's what I love to do. I love to explore. So how do I merge everything that I want to do into like something that's actually doable, something that has
Right.
steps, right? Something I can go to YouTube and look for advice. And I love travel and I love writing. Why not write about travel? So I became a travel writer.
Wow. But being able to remember that childhood dream, I think, is something that if people don't take the time to actually go back and ask that question, what did I want to be? What was that drive? What was that exciting thing I thought I wanted to be when I grew up? If you're not able to find that, people go through severe depression because you're trying to trace that dream that you had and you don't really take the time to evaluate that. Wow.
But I think that that's like the value of the depression. Depression tends to be your friend, but it's usually the friend that tells you what you don't want to hear. That
Yeah.
things aren't going right, you need a change. And fortunately, at that time, I listened to it and I was like, I knew I needed something different. And it also provided the solution and it just spun my life around just a whole 180 from like pushing papers in like an office in Mexico to like, okay, like now let's go out and start exploring. So a little after that, I quit my job and I had started my law firm, but I was broke because I didn't have any clients or had like a very small amount of clients. This is way before everybody started doing like remote work and like all of that. I actually started doing it kind of like in hiding here in Mexico because it was
Mm,
very frowned upon.
yeah.
So like I would pretend I was in my home city, but I was like somewhere else. And I had like $100 or so, $200 of savings worth left. So I bought a plane ticket to Sonora, which is like the most dangerous region in Mexico, or one of the most dangerous regions. It's just south of Arizona. It's the Sonoran Desert.
Okay.
And I said, I am going to go to this desert and I am going to visit the indigenous peoples there because they're very remote. They're very far off. They're very off the beaten path. They live very much in their own little worlds. And I had just been there for a wedding that never happened. But so I got to see the town and I came face to face with this mural that showed me all the different cultures in that region, in the Sonoran Desert region. And I just became entranced by it. And I just decided that this is where I'm going to come and this is where I'm going to start. So I traveled to Sonora with only $40 in my pocket, which I spent drinking on the beach in 3 days. And for the rest of that month, I hitchhiked around the whole region, over 2,000 kilometers worth of hitchhiking throughout the desert, visiting indigenous peoples,
Mm-hmm.
being part of dances, and like going into the desert, into these remote villages, like walking in the desert, and just experiencing life through these different people's shoes for my first book, which is going to be published soon, and it's going to be called Where the Deer Dance, because the deer are the spirit animal of the region there. And that's how it started. It just really kicked off this whole journey of adventure, but mostly misadventure,
Yeah.
and finding flow in the outside world. And in finding flow in the outside world, also having it reflect on my interior world. So there's this like nice
Mm-hmm.
dynamic of outer experiencing and inner growth going on, personal transformation. Travel, of course, is, in my opinion, as a professional traveler, it's always weird when I say that, but travel has this very deep transformative effect, as
Yeah.
many listeners, I'm sure, know too. And that's basically how I started. I mean, it's been many adventures since in the jungles of Yucatan and the mountains of Guatemala, in the Andes with the Quillacinga peoples, in the Alto Putumayo in Ecuador, in the US too. I've done quite a bit of traveling in the US, which for me, it's kind of the same thing as if Americans come to Mexico. For me, the US is as exotic, but in
Yeah.
very different ways. Blinkers, for one, are like a very exotic thing, which we don't use here.
Like the
Canada.
signals in your car.
Oh, yeah. If you want to learn how to drive defensively, come to Mexico.
Yeah, I had a passenger seat experience with that, and I was like, I'm never driving here. It's fun. I'm never driving here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, for sure.
So I was expecting you to say that this shark adventure actually happened amidst your travels. This is before you even got
I
that
was a
spark.
corporate, I was still a corporate lawyer working in an office, and it was a very good job because they gave you 10 days vacation for the whole year. I mean, by Mexican standards. Mexicans usually
Okay.
get like 6 or 7 days a year. So having 10 days basically gave you like 2 weeks if you stacked like the work days together.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, if I'm gonna get just 10 days, and so basically I'm gonna be only be able to travel once for the whole year. It'll be like a vacation that I really wanted to do. And I am a diving aficionado. So I said, I'm going to take a divecation. And I had subscribed to Dive magazine, the scuba diving magazine. And they had this like dive deals section in their website. So being like the cheap Mexican that I am, I was always like browsing the deals, see what I could come up with. And there was always this ad that would pop out called it was called Blackbeard's Cruises out of Florida. Well, I mean they're a U.S. company out of Florida, but they do these liveaboards out of Nassau, so you can basically camp and live on the ship because it's very like rough accommodations, but in a very good way. And you live on board, you sleep on board, you eat on board, and they take you to all these incredible offshore locations in the Bahamas. And you get to dive all of them and do like 2 to 3 tank dives every day for like a week or so. So I thought, like, screw it, why not?
Yeah.
Let's do this. And during one of those dives, I ended up in the water with so I was the youngest diver, the least experienced diver, of course, on the ship. So they paired me with the scuba diving has the buddy system. You're never supposed to go diving alone. It's a perfect way to just disappear, right? So you have, because of the buddy system, they paired me with the one with the oldest diver with the most experience. So it was this guy, this Englishman who was into like dive photography, had this like huge camera. So we were always the last in the water. And we're doing one of those I mean, mainly because you have to prepare the camera and all of it, and I always double check like my gear. I mean, I've done everything you shouldn't do in diving. Like I've jumped in with like the air turned off. Like I mean, all kinds of like things, right?
Okay.
I mean, just to start. So I was really careful because like you always do like little stuff like that, and so we were always the last in the water. And I remember during that one of those dives, I went in and we were gonna go see this like this rock, this like rock with like underwater caves with and coral reefs around it. But the ship had anchored and it was all sand beneath us. So I look down and I see nothing but sand, and you have a compass. So you're navigating more or less, okay, like where you're going, because you can't really see that far underwater. Even though in the Bahamas you can, it was still all sand. So we both go in and I ask the people on the boat, oh, where's what bearing is the rock? And they go, oh, just go northwest and you can't miss it. So we start swimming and we reach the rock, and we spend this amazing hour because it was a very shallow dive. We spent this amazing hour like looking at sea turtles and like all kinds of corals and fish. And I mean, the Bahamas is amazing. It's a paradise on water. Like if people think it looks beautiful outside, like on the beach and on the
Yeah.
coast, it's even more beautiful underwater. That's really incredible. And I mean, this guy would spend like 15 minutes taking a picture of like a shrimp, and I would just be like whizzing around, swimming and everything. And then we just spent like that hour like that, and we had all the other people from the boat around us until there came this moment where I just kind of looked around and there was nobody around us. I just had this like feeling of like loneliness, like oh, like there's nobody around us. Like everybody's gone back. So I checked my gear and I was starting to run low. So I just go to this guy. I start putting on his fin while he was taking a picture of like a sea slug on like a fan or something. And I go like, hey, like, I mean, underwater, right? I'm just like signaling with like my hands and stuff. Like, hey, like everybody's gone. Like, how's your air? He's like, oh, like I'm starting to run low. So I tell him like, let's go back. And he's like, okay, like let's swim back. So he starts swimming and I start following him. And I'm following him for like 5 minutes and we don't see the boat. 10 minutes, we don't see the boat. So I pull on his fin again and I just go like, hey, like, where's the boat? And he just signals to me like, I don't know. I'm following you. And I'm like, well, you're an idiot because I'm following you. Because I mean, I was not the experienced diver of the two. So I was just following like his lead, right?
Right.
So he just kind of goes like, ho, ho, ho. And like, okay, so we were going northwest. So I just thought, okay, let's just go southeast and we'll like retrace like our steps, right? So we go back, we get to the coral rock again, but we're running very low on air. So we surface, we do our stop, like our decompression stop, and then we surface. And we see the ship, and the ship is maybe like 100 meters or away or so. So it's like, okay, there it is. We inflate our dive vest and we start swimming. And you put the snorkel on when you're on the surface because you have like the waves battering your face and stuff, right? And it just makes it easier to just keep swimming. We're swimming towards the ship, and I look down, and there's a shark like going around us, just circling us at the bottom of the, like by the bottom of the sea. And I'm just like, okay, it's just a shark. I had just had my first shark encounter, like on the previous dive, and I had basically just jumped into like this guy's arms and just like pointed at the thing, like in the cartoon, like, you know, and he just like looks at it, just like he's like, oh, we're fine, and just like kept taking a picture of like a crab or something, right? And so it's like, okay, if this guy isn't panicking, like we're fine.
Yeah.
So I just looked at it and I just kind of took that feeling back, like, okay, like we're fine. He's not panicking. He's not an experienced diver. We're okay. It's just one shark, 2 versus 1, good odds. So we start swimming, and as we're swimming, I look down again, and now there's 2 sharks.
Oh.
And they're a little bit like that much closer. And I'm like, still good odds. It's like if you're in a bar, it's like mano a mano, like 1 versus 1, like still pretty decent, right? Like the thing with sharks is that you shouldn't you should always be facing the shark because the sharks tend to like sneak up on you because they're smart. I mean, they're very, very smart. And you can kind of tell by looking into their eyes that they're just like analyzing every situation, right? They have these like big, like almost like drunk eyes, but they're thinking. Like you can tell that they're thinking. Like when you see a dog, when you hide the ball from your dog, and the dog is like, "Where's the ball?" and it's like trying to figure out where the ball went. That's kind of the feeling I got, but much more menacing, right? Because it's just like,
Right.
because it's like hundreds of pounds of pure muscle and evolution, like and teeth. Yeah, mostly the teeth powering this like beautiful, majestic creature. So I'm like, okay, it's just 2 sharks. It's fine, We can both face him and they're not going to get close. So we keep swimming, and I look down again, and now there's 4 sharks, and they're
Oh,
much closer now. And
goodness.
the problem was that if we would have been underwater, you can just kind of be at their level and kind of like face them, like you're fine, right? For the most, I mean, depending on the shark species, but you're usually fine. But we were on the surface, so we're vulnerable. We're these like floating like dinner bells, right? Just like swimming,
Kicking
okay,
along. Yeah.
yeah, just chilling, kicking along. So at that point, I look to my buddy and I go like, "Hey, dude, have you seen that there's like a ton of sharks beneath us?" And he just goes like, "Yeah, swim for it." We're just like, I mean, we're not in a panic, but we're like we're swimming with a purpose, right? There's a reason why we're swimming now. So I look down again, and now there's 7 sharks,
Oh my gosh.
and they get between us and the boat. So now we're basically far away from the ship. We're surrounded by all these sharks, and they're getting closer and closer and closer. I mean, you can just tell that they're, at the very least, if they're not hungry, they're curious. And the problem is that sharks are kind of like dogs in the way that dogs feel the world with their mouths and their
Yep.
teeth, and sharks do too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Their
they get
curiosity
too-
hurts.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're just swimming, and I just have this moment. There comes a moment like we're bunching together so that we are this like big mass that they think a little more about approaching. And I just had this thought just rush through my head where it's like, crap, I'm dead. Like I'm about to witness my death. My mom was right. I should not have gone to the Bahamas. I should have stayed home, like every good Mexican boy does. Like I should not have like left on this adventure. Like screw this. I should be working. I should be pushing papers in an office somewhere. Like I'm just like, having all these thoughts rush through my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of realized, like, if I panic, I am going to signal to the sharks that I'm prey. So I don't know how I did it, but I just summoned up all, like, the huevos that I have, and I just really chilled out. And I just I just focused on swimming, on getting to the back of the ship. Because everybody by this time on the ship, like, they were blasting music and drinking and just basically having a party, and nobody was, like, really aware that we were in the water. I mean, they knew we were not on board, but they weren't, because it was more of like a self-guided kind of a thing. Because you expected to be more of an experienced diver. That's why they put me with the most experienced one. So it was more your responsibility to come and go from the ship, right? And I'm just like, well, nobody's gonna realize we're gone, and they're just gonna find our fins or something like later. But we kept swimming, and the sharks getting closer and closer and closer. And there's no way to keep them at bay, right? Because you can't really face them, because if you're facing one, there's 3 behind you who are sneaking up. And then at one point, the sharks, when they start exhibiting like territorial and aggressive behavior, they start swimming and moving their fins in a certain way. So they started getting aggressive, and one of them basically makes a go for my buddy. So this guy turns around, sees the shark like darting in. So he takes his camera, smacks it on the nose. And the other sharks just kind of go like what's going on, right? And they just step back a little bit. And that gave us just enough time to get to the back of the ship. And there was this like long rope trailing behind. And I grabbed a hold of that rope. I don't know if you're a diver, Grace, if you had experience
No.
with like, well, the equipment is very heavy because you have the tanks, you're strapped down by lead weights. You have a ton of gear, right? And it tends to be very heavy, very clunky. So you usually take everything off in the water and you pass it to the person on the boat, and then you leave the water with no gear, because it can be dangerous to step out with all the gear on. You can slip and hurt yourself. I jumped out of the water with everything I had, lead weights, tank, everything. I just sprang out of the water like, nope, 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 nope. This is not going to happen today. Not today. Maybe tomorrow, but hoy, no, mañana. And I think that was the first serious adventure I had. Like the
Oh
first,
my goodness.
like, real brush with death. The first real, like, risky, like, oh, this is like a bar story I'll be telling for the rest of my life. Kind of a,
Yeah. Oh wow. Now, do you still dive?
oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Have
The
you,
irony is that sharks are my favorite animal.
so I was going to say, is there any like lesson learned from that experience, or is that just like, that's just one of the things that could happen?
I think that the lesson is listen to your mom and don't,
I know.
don't leave your corporate job to turn pirate and travel the world. No, I'm kidding. But I think just keeping a cool head under pressure
Mm-hmm.
always helps. Like not giving into panic for that one in particular. But yeah, no, it was quite an experience. But there have been many other adventures besides. I mean, everything from like near runs with death, with in machete motorcycle accidents in the jungle, with traveling among Mayans, to traveling some of the most dangerous places in Colombia and Mexico and Guatemala, but also very beautiful experiences, like very spiritual and deep and connected travels, like among shamans and among indigenous shamans. Like a lot of my friends in Guatemala are Mayan spiritual guides, Ajkihab, they're called. So I got to travel and experience a lot with them, to go around pilgrimages with them all around Guatemala, visiting all these sacred sites, being a part of these mystical fire ceremonies in jungles and caves, and even in ruins. We even had a major ceremony that we did in front of the pyramids in Tikal, in what was a very significant ceremony for them. And then getting to write about all of this and like share my stories on YouTube. I unfortunately started to do YouTube very late, like 7 years too late. Like I always took notes for my books, but I never really took video for a lot of these adventures until fairly recently. And I mean, it would have been incredible to have seen some of these stories come to life, like on screen too. But it has all been like a part of this journey where you're constantly growing and learning more things about yourself, discovering new passions. Like everything started with writing, but it would soon spill over into photography and videography and into speaking and like recording podcasts like this, for example,
Yeah.
with you. There's no small amount of personal growth that happens when you travel, because you're constantly putting yourself out there. You're constantly testing yourself, testing your mettle against these very uncomfortable situations. Anything from, like tight bus rides where you're 24 hours on this like jumping bus going through these like remote parts of the world. You can't feel your legs anymore. You're trying to like shift like your butt a little so that to kind of spread the pain around so that you can not be as uncomfortable. And then you just kind of give in to the pain and you're just kind of like sitting there uncomfortable and you're just used to it by then. Or meeting all these amazing people doing amazing things all over the world with like all these unsung heroes and amazing artists, people who just are not out in like the public eye or in the media, but they're doing these incredible things, or have these amazing stories. And just having your mind blown constantly, like having that be the norm, right? Of like having spiritual encounters and I mean run-ins with the paranormal. I don't know if like some of your listeners are into that kind of a thing, but like when you travel, especially among indigenous peoples, you have all kinds of things happen. It's everything. It's the world. There's a whole world of experience out there, and it's just kind of waiting for you, right? And not necessarily because you have to go out on these like crazy adventures like I do, but even just going to a place where you have always wanted to go, or to go for like a festival that you have been wanting to see, or to just kind of get out of your comfort zone, like that's enough to just have these incredible experiences, right? Like travel always meets you right where you are.
Exactly. Exactly. And one of the things that I share with other people is that when you are traveling, you don't need to do like the big, gigantic, expensive trip, right? You can start where you are. But I think what you mentioned is so key. It's having that mindset to be open, to get to know other people, to get to know other cultures, and fully like immerse yourself into what's happening so that you can experience new and different, mysterious, and like there's so much that you can get out of an experience outside of, yeah, I went and that's it, You come back with stories and internal change.
Yeah. I love sharing my stories. And every time I open up and I share them, like, everybody else just everybody has some kind of a story, right? And you can tell that every time they tell these stories, they're always some of the most cherished ones. They're always like almost like these outlier stories where it's like these like life defining moments where like you had this like encounter or you had this like one misadventure and everybody just has like those stories and it's I think that they add a lot of value to your life. Like they add like a lot of like I think fluff might not be the substance. They add a lot of substance like thinking to your memories, like thinking back and like, oh, I did this and this happened and I lived through this and I experienced this. And it is always amazing.
And
Like,
also to tell your story. I think you are reminded of some things that maybe the first, fifth, 12th time you tell the story, the next time you're sharing it, you're like, oh, I forgot about this part. Or, I never noticed how that experience affected me until like 3 years from now. And now I realize how much I've grown since then. So
yeah,
it's something that it's continuously working in you.
it's the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah.
Because you keep finding these different layers of meaning
Yes.
as you're maturing, as you're growing. Like you keep finding these new things, right? Because maybe in the moment things just feel very raw or material in the sense of like it's real
Mm.
life, right? And you're just experiencing it, you're just living it, but you don't regularly assign significance. Sometimes you do, like when you're very aware of like what you're seeing, sometimes you do. But a lot of that comes later. That's a very helpful part of being like a writer, that like I get to process all these experiences in very deep ways that something like video doesn't allow, for example, into like a level of depth that no other medium really allows, and just really exploring like the inner workings of like what happened and what the significance of that was and what the impact has been over the years, right? Like when I was running around with Mayan shamans, for example, it was cool, it was amazing, it was mind blowing, but I wasn't fully aware the degree of the importance of what they were doing, be for themselves and for the world and for me. And that just kind of comes with time, right? So these stories become like aged wine. The more you tell them, like the better you get at telling them, and also like the more meaning you can assign. And it
Mm-hmm.
really is the gift that keeps on giving.
I like that. Our stories are like aged wine. That's true. And think about, if we had a new traveler, somebody who wants to step a little bit further outside of their travel experience, what's some advice that you would give them to start their journey, especially if they're a solo traveler?
I would say the water's warm. Don't think twice about it. Don't dally. Just dive right in. Plan if you're a planner. I'm not, frankly. But travel has a way, and like the universe in general, like God, like whatever higher power you believe in, combined with these experiences, like has a way of softening your landing and just putting you right where you have to be to live exactly what you need to live. Like that adventure is out there waiting for you. And all you have to do is keep an open mind and just go seek it. And I assure you, you will find it. And it doesn't have to be this big, like, dangerous adventures in some remote part of the world. It could even be the next town over. Travel is not so much, it is the act by definition of moving around the world, right? Of seeing different parts of the world. But it's more the mindset. The traveler's mindset is something that you take with you when you go and when you come back. So just go. Just go on that adventure. We all have it. We all know what it is. I mean, as somebody who used to repress those urges and now doesn't, I can tell you that we all know what that adventure is inside us. So what we want to experience. And you will always figure out the hows and you will always figure out the whens and all of that. But as soon as you have the what, just go seek it out.
Those are powerful words. Thank you for sharing that. Before we go, can you tell us what's next for you? I know you mentioned your book, but what else is going on? And just remind us of the title of your upcoming book, please.
Well, you guys can find more about me and my travel stories through my online platform, which is Rambling and Roving Miguel Yga. You can find me like that on YouTube, Rambling and Roving Miguel Yga. And I recently also wrote a book about decolonization. It's actually my first book. I decided to prioritize it over my travel writing because I thought it had more of a social message and it had a bit more of less indulgent message, right? So I just decided to prioritize that. It's called The Embrace of Silence, a story of hope and healing during the Guatemalan Civil War. You can find it on all platforms, all major book platforms online, in print and in ebook form. It's the story of two Guatemalan Mayan sisters who survived the Guatemalan genocide during the 1980s during the civil war that they had in the country. It's the story of how do you heal the unhealable wounds of such a traumatic event. It's about the lonely paths that we walk on the way back to wholeness. And it's exploring this whole theme of decolonization and violence against indigenous peoples, and also how you can find that inner strength inside you despite the painful things that happen to you. So I think it's a message that can speak to everybody. We all have something that hurts us or that has caused pain in our past. And I think that the stories that this is actually a real story. So I was in Guatemala for 3 months interviewing survivors of the Civil War. And I turned their stories into this epic story that spans several decades, ranging from before the war, during the war, and after the war. Just kind of the lingering effects. And I think that the stories of these women are very inspiring, and everybody can find some kind of deep meaning and learn and take away deep lessons from my book. So there's that. And what's next? I'm actually a couple of weeks away from going to Micronesia for a couple of years and traveling that side of the world, which is a new part of the world for me. Mostly I focus on traveling closer to home in this hemisphere. And now I'm branching out towards Asia, and I got a job teaching English as an English teacher on a remote island called Yap in the middle of the Micronesian Sea. Why they would hire a Mexican to teach English, I don't know, but um, yeah, I mean, it kind of that experience. I mean, that opportunity dropped into my lap. Actually, at a hostel in Guadalajara, I spoke to this. I just out of a random hostel conversation, and I got this amazing opportunity to experience life among the Yapese people of Micronesia.
Mm-hmm.
So just this perfect opportunity that, again, that's travel keeping on giving.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm very surprised. I actually have heard of Yap. I'm looking forward to hearing your adventures after that. I have a question about Guatemala. Did you get a chance to, or the women that you interviewed for your book, were they a part of, and please correct me if you know the name of the tribe, was it Gafunda?
Garifuna. I traveled among.
Yes. Okay. Can you say it again?
Garifuna.
Galifuna. All right. Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Did you get to interact with that group?
Yeah. I spent time in Belize among the Garifunas in Punta Gorda. The main town where most of them live is in Dangriga in southern Belize. There's quite a bit of other populations in Guatemala, like on the coast, on the Caribbean coast, and in, I believe, up to Honduras, they have some communities there too. But I actually met this incredible healing lady, this Garifuna healing woman, medicine woman. And she just kind of took me in, and then she got me a stay with the Garifuna family in Punta Gorda. Shout outs to you, Andre, if you're watching this. And it was just amazing. I mean, they have this whole story of how they are going back to like more sustainable ways of farming and agriculture, these deep spiritual traditions. And the setting in southern Belize is just beautiful. I mean, it's jungles and coast and very, very exotic. Very, very exotic. So, yeah, if I remember correctly, something like 3 weeks among them.
Wow. Okay. That's cool. Yeah, you mentioned it, and I was like, I need to get the name before I say it wrong. But no, that's it's a huge world, but a small world too.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, I have bumped into people. I've met people in like a hostel in Merida in southern Mexico, and then been in like the middle of like a small random town in Colombia, and we bump into each other. And it's like, what are you doing here?
What are
And
you
why
doing here?
yeah, and why didn't you invite me?
That's the more important question.
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
are you traveling without me? What is this?
It's a very Mexican thing to say. It's gracias por invitarme. Like, thanks for inviting me. Like, like just invite me next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's so many cool little stories, and there's always one that comes up from like every single trip.
Well, Miguel, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast and sharing your stories. And I always say it's funny how like sometimes I try to have like a very broad but general plan of how the conversation is going to go, and then it goes completely different. And I am so happy at the end, like this is this is the discussion we had instead. So thank you so much for being here.
That's exactly how travel is. That's exactly how it is. You think you're just gonna go have like a simple little trip, and it ends up being this whole other thing that probably what you had planned, but in the end, it was just perfect. Thank you so much for this conversation, Grace, and for the opportunity to talk to your listeners a little bit and share my stories. And yeah, I mean, this was an amazing conversation.
Hey there, Grace here. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained some useful takeaways. Thank you so much for listening and staying until the end. Don't forget to rate the show or share it with some friends. Have a wonderful week, take care, and remember, be bold, be curious, be ready to tell your story. You never know who needs it. Bye-bye.